Good evening, everyone. Do I need this microphone? And I will leave that to Representative Brewery to lead the forum. All right, why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lesson 1. Let's all.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight and joining us in this important conversation about how to keep our communities safe and reduce the dangers of senseless gun violence. Mayor Rosenthal, thank you for your nice words and kind introduction. Thank you, Representative Brewery, for hosting tonight's forum. You have been a passionate advocate in Springfield for responsible gun laws and a powerful voice in our community for reducing gun violence. I want to thank you as well, Moms Demand Action, and Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence. Thank you tonight for participating in this forum. And thank you for your outstanding leadership in the long-term effort to reduce gun violence. I know the other presenters will highlight in detail Illinois' new concealed carry law and the impact it has for businesses in our community. So let me take this opportunity to offer a brief update about some of what's going on at the federal level to address growing gun violence in our communities. I'd like to start with a personal story. My family has experienced gun violence firsthand. My great uncle, my grandmother's younger brother, was murdered with a gun before I was born. In the Jewish tradition, I was named in his memory. Though I never knew him, his good character and commitment to public service is a legacy I carry with me to this day. I pray for the day when no family suffers from the senseless loss of a loved one. Again, another personal moment of reflection. I think back to December in 2012. I was a newly elected representative attending the orientation session for new Congress members with my new colleagues. Gathering for an early morning session breakfast, the representative-elect from Connecticut got a text message indicating that there had been a shooting in her district, and there was likely at least one person killed. We all soon learned that 20 school children and 6 adults were murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary School. The tragedy put a renewed focus on efforts to reduce gun violence and sparked a national conversation about what we can do at a federal level to combat gun violence. Among the sensible ideas proposed was expanding background checks on gun purchases to include guns sold at gun shows and over the internet. This is something that 90% of Americans, including 74% of NRA members, agree with. And it is a sensible way to help gun violence safety. I do think that we need to have universal background checks and close the gun show loophole. That's why I proudly co-sponsored the bipartisan compromise on expanding background checks, which would strengthen the instant check system. Unfortunately, we all saw what happened last spring when a small minority in the Senate defeated this common sense reform. I haven't had too many disappointing days serving the 10th District in Congress, but that day was definitely one of them. After the defeat in the Senate, it's no secret that enacting new measures in Congress seeking to reduce gun violence became tougher. But I firmly believe these are things worth fighting for. It might not be easy, but it is important. Because at a time when 40% of gun purchases are done without a background check, and every day more than 30 Americans are murdered using guns, this issue is too important just to move on and accept the status quo. From expanding background checks to finally making gun trafficking a federal crime, as well as expanding access to mental health services, it's well past time for us to act. We can and should be taking common sense steps to reduce gun violence. But let me be clear. We must still protect law-abiding citizens constitutional right to bear arms. It is in this context that I will continue advocating as vigorously as I can for sensible reforms that make our streets, schools, and communities safe, while also ensuring that our Second Amendment rights are fully protected. While partisan gridlock in Congress has so far prevented action, I've been calling on the administration to fully implement the President's executive order to reduce gun violence. And I have called on the President to renew the enforcement of a bipartisan ban on imported military-style weapons. I firmly believe we must take a comprehensive approach toward reducing gun violence, investigating its root causes, and investing in programs to help prevent crime before it happens. This, a necessity, includes making mental health treatment readily available to those who need it. There are too many in our communities who feel isolated in terms of violence and are readily shut out from much-needed mental health care. Reducing gun violence also means providing safe places for kids who otherwise might turn to gangs or violence. Now, of course, we cannot prevent every tragedy, but we can commit ourselves to making weekends, like this past weekend in Chicago, much more rare. No mother should have to wait for the news, as happened in North Chicago last week, that our 8th grade son was found in an alley, shot in the head. No father should have to sit vigil next to his 15-year-old daughter, praying that she will survive the physical wounds from one of the random bullets that seems to rain down on neighborhoods with ever-increasing frequency.
It's because of the gangbangers.
And no child should have to work through the invisible wounds of growing up in a neighborhood where gun violence is more common than after-school programs. Unless you think that it cannot happen here, last year's murder of Colin Nutter should be a reminder to us all. This violence is just as likely to come to our own backyards. So it's time for Congress to act. Not by going to extremes, but by taking smart, reasonable action. This starts with new, sensible measures, stronger enforcement, local community engagement like tonight, and a broad commitment to reducing gun violence. Thank you again for coming to this program tonight. I look forward to hearing from tonight's presenters and hearing theirs and your ideas to help make our communities, our schools, our streets more safe and more secure. Thank you very much.
Board HB 5929. Support your active duty military living in Illinois.
How do you feel about the bracelets? Tracking bracelets. What's your opinion on that?
Good evening, everybody. I'm State Representative Scott Drury. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Congressman Schneider. Thank you, Mayor, for hosting this event. It's been my goal since being a representative to do events like this that aren't always events where everybody agrees with each other. We've done them on pensions, we've done them on costs, and we continue doing it because I think it's important to have the public discussion. And the goal tonight is to have just that, a public discussion. I will be civil in my remarks. I'm sure the presenters will be civil in theirs. And all we ask in return is that we have a civil dialogue. People will be allowed to ask questions. We ask that the questions actually be questions. This isn't time to advocate, and it's because we're on the timeline.